Welcome to Vintage SF. I'm Richard Rempel, and today I have a special guest, a guest from NESFA. What's NESFA? Well, we'll find out today. My guest is Tim Szczesuil. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And I'd like to find out, one of the things I like to ask our guests is their origin story into SF. What brought them into the genre, or what made them fall in love with the genre?
Well, I've been a voracious reader since I was a child. Children's books then and now feature a lot of fantasy. Writers like C.S. Lewis, Roald Dahl, Lloyd Alexander, and eventually J.R.R. Tolkien. Those are the kind of things I really loved when I was a kid, those kind of fantasy books. Interestingly, when I was in high school, and I read this Lord of the Rings, and I went to my librarian. I said, do you have anything like this? He gave me Stephen R. Donaldson's Thomas Covenant series. Nailed it. Anyway, yeah, I've been a voracious reader. I still am. I read a lot more nonfiction now than I ever did then, but I still read a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy.
I always think about some of the fiction that we read when we're young teens as being very formative in terms of our tastes, and they hold a nostalgia to them, but they also kind of have a wonder to them that stick with us. And so I meet a lot of people who some of the things that they first read as young teens is the genre that they really enjoy.
I'll be honest, Lynn Carter was one of my favorite authors back then. Not so much anymore. So that's kind of I still enjoy him, but it's not really kind of my sweet spot right now,
But it doesn't hold up to your memory. Your memory's much better,
I'm
isn't
afraid
it?
it doesn't.
I want to find out, and our viewers want to find out, what is NESFA to start with, and then we'll talk about the press NESFA run.
We don't generally say NESFA. We usually just say NESFA.
That is a question that some of my friends and I have. So it's good to hear that you use the term NESFA.
Yeah. It was founded in 1967 by a group of MIT grads and science fiction fans. I think they were part of the MIT Science Fiction Society, or whatever the group is that they have over there. And after they graduated, they wanted to continue doing science fiction stuff, right? And they were doing a convention, and in the 1980s, they'd been doing Boskone for a while, and they purchased a clubhouse in Somerville in Massachusetts.
This is Boston, Boskone? Yeah.
Yes. Boskone is kind of, it's a reference to the E. Doc Smith series of Lensman. There's a Boskone thing there. That doesn't hold up all that well, but it's classic, so you have to kind of refer to it, I suppose. Anyway, so the convention was quite successful, and they had been meeting in various places, and they wanted to have a venue to meet in and to have a place to keep the library. So they purchased a clubhouse, and it's been very good because it kind of gives us a place to meet, have get-togethers, things like book clubs, things like that, to create a focus in the community,
And so it stands for New England Science Fiction Association.
That's correct.
And I think it's around 1990 or the early 1990s, you had been doing some publications, some fan publications, I understand, but then you decided to go into something called choice books.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that all began, what the press is?
So even before there was a NESFA, there were people in that group of people that were working on indexes. So indexing the science fiction that became available. So generally you'd be 1 or 2 years behind, but people wanted to know, okay, what was published this year? Back before the internet, children, it was really hard to keep track of the stuff that was published. If you have a favorite author what did he publish, and people were interested in not just the novels and stuff, but also short stories and poetry and other stuff like that. Anyway, they started with indexing, but as soon as Boskone began, they were doing these little chapbooks of guest of honor collections. So those were the Boskone books. So essentially, they're little kind of honoraria books for the guests. And I was actually involved in doing some of that work. I wasn't an editor to begin with, but I was working on it. I remember going to Stratus and doing markup on their computers to lay out the books. It was very tedious. So we've been doing that for a while. Not every year, but the idea was to have a small little book that people could take home and experience the work of the guest of honor if they weren't familiar with it. Anyway, people like Gene Wolfe, Donald A. Wollheim, and people like that. And it occurred to us that there were a lot of works of science fiction that were out of print or otherwise not generally available. We called it the NESFA's Choice series, okay? And the whole idea was to bring that stuff back into print so that they would be readily available for people, for fans of the current generation who didn't have a slew of anthologies from the 60s and 50s and 60s, that you could just pull up a book of the best of James H. Schmitz, or Cordwainer Smith, or Zeta Henderson. These people who are really iconic in their time, but it's not economically viable for someone to go and reprint that stuff and put it out as mass market paperback. Just not possible. Well, for us, it's not about making money. It's about just covering our costs and getting the books into the reader's hands. That's what it's about. And for me, the one that I found that I really felt like this stuff should be in print was the works of Cyril Kornbluth. He just really, yeah. He really spoke to me, and I was really shocked that you can't find his stuff, or I couldn't find his stuff.
One of the things when I first came back to science fiction, I'd read it a lot when I was young, but then I came back to it here as I entered into retirement. I'd never heard of Kornbluth. And as I went into, when I had purchased this book, and I'd also read The Little Black Bag, I think that's the title of the story.
Yes.
That is in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame book. I realized this is an amazing author that I haven't experienced. And then I just started to discover he had a very short life.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit more about that, and then tell me a little bit about how the book came together.
Well, first of all, he smoked like a chimney. So, I mean, it was very common back then. He lived hard and fast. He drank very heavily, even as a very young kid. In fact, he was one of the Futurians, and they were also kind of communists. And one of the people, I think it was Paul, who was a member, was actually I'm not sure which one of them, but one of them was actually a card-carrying member of the Communist Party in pre-World War II. And he was such a heavy drinker, and like 16, 15 years old, and such a heavy smoker that the people in charge of the Communist Society were like, dude, you can't bring this kid here because you're corrupting him. And it's like, I'm not corrupting him, he's corrupting me. He was just that kind of, look, he knew his thing. He was a very sharp person. He was a very intelligent guy. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. But he was very acerbic. There's a story that he went in to meet John W. Campbell, the famous editor, and Paul brought him in and he introduced himself, and then he told Campbell that he was shit, that everything he edited was shit. He spent the entire time trashing Campbell's work, right? the editing they had done. And on the way out, Paul's like, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, "Because he'll remember me." And I'm like, "Okay, but he's not going to remember you very well." But, that was Kornbluth. Kornbluth was, he didn't want to be another person. He wanted to be that guy that you remembered, a little bit later.
I'm guessing Harlan Ellison.
Harlan Ellison.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure they overlapped a little bit, but so anyway, from what I understand, they were all either enlisted or they were inducted into the army during Second World War, and Kornbluth had actually been put into a sort of a officer training, but just before the Battle of the Bulge, they realized that, hey, the war's going to end soon. We don't really need all these officers. Make him an enlisted man. So they put him in enlisted man, and he ended up fighting in the Battle of the Bulge. And he says that he got kind of sick by lugging a machine gun around the Ardennes or wherever the Battle of the Bulge took place. Anyway, I don't know if that's the case, but he certainly came back with hypertension and a lot of other problems. Apparently, he was shoveling snow one morning, and he had to run off to go take a train somewhere. And running to catch the train, he died of a heart attack. And
this was about the mid 1950s, was it?
Yeah, 55, and he was 35 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he made so much work that we have. Well, there was a best of that I know I mentioned you. Well, for my viewers here, Tim edited this book, His Share of Glory. It was one of the first NESFA choice books, and he talks about looking at and trying to get a hold of the best of C.M. Kornbluth when he was interested in other books that he had. And it was difficult. This is before the internet. This is before you could find things on eBay from all over the world. He was looking in used bookstores. And so this became a passion of yours to edit this book for NESFA.
Yeah. Well, my discovery of Kornbluth came when RoboCop, the movie came out. I saw it with my wife, and there's a line in the movie, "I'd buy that for $1." And I was certain that I'd heard that before.
If I remember right, that's the game show host who is always on TV.
On the movie. It's a television, but it's a recurring theme. Anyway, I was certain that I heard it before, and of course my wife knew immediately. Oh, that was The Marching Morons by C.M. Kornbluth, and I'm like, oh yeah. I think I read that in an anthology somewhere. That back in the 60s and 70s, you could get cheap anthologies, secondhand or something. So I certainly ran through a lot of them. I remembered the story, and I remembered that I really enjoyed it. But I obviously, you read a lot of stuff, and it's like, at the time I didn't connect, that this is a good writer. It was just another good writer that I had read. Okay. But seeing it in the movie, it was like, I wonder what else he wrote. Okay. Then that's where I found, this other stuff that he had written. And that was kind of my rediscovery of Kornbluth. I really enjoy his acerbic sense of humor. It's a bit cynical, but it's very intelligent and a lot of fun. It took a couple of years to put that book together, but the most challenging part was his aliases, his pen names. As I said, Kornbluth was part of the Futurians, Fred Pohl, Don A. Walheim, and others. They would put together these cheap anthologies, to make some money. So they would get a few good stories, and then they would have to fill it up. They would need some filler stories to fill a space in the book so that they could publish a book and get someone to actually spend 95 cents for it, whatever it is. So it was quite common for any of them to just sit down and bang out something not particularly well crafted, and they didn't care about it. They didn't care about putting their names on it. They would use these house names. A good reason they didn't care is because they didn't get paid. If they got paid, it was like pennies on the word, or maybe $10 or something to do a short story or something like that. They would sit down to write a story, and then they'd be called away, and somebody else would sit down and finish the story. Sometimes they would know who did it. Sometimes they didn't. As you can imagine, it's really hard to be certain of the authorship of some of these stories. So that was a bit of a challenge. But, there were a number of there are people out there, and there are sources out there that you just have to do the best you can and say, look, this is the situation. Even the people involved aren't really certain who authored these stories. They're possibly collaborations, but these are the ones that we were fairly certain that he wrote himself. And at a certain point, you have to draw the line and say, this is the works. These are what we're presenting. We're presenting the work of Cyril Kornbluth. We're not presenting the work of the Futurians. So I tried to get that book to be, his work and a good representation of what made Cyril Kornbluth a really good author who should be read even today.
Yeah. And you were doing this almost 40 years after his death. And he was really well known for collaborations with other authors. I think of Frederick Pohl and his book, The Space Merchant.
That's right.
Space Merchants, etc. That's one that still is being published today.
Yes.
But otherwise, it was very hard to find material from Kornbluth. And what I love about NESFA, one of the reasons I've fallen in love with your press, is that you have these collections that are often complete collections of stories, or very close to complete collections of stories. For example, Zena Henderson was one of the first one that I got, and there's a second one called Believing, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
This one is the stories of the people, and Believing is her other short stories.
That's right.
And you also even had some omnibuses of short novels, and C.M. Kornbluth right here with Judith Merrill. There's some work in there.
Stuff.
Yeah. And so I started discovering this. A friend of mine, Matt from Science Fiction Reads, had introduced me to it, and I started looking at it. And the quality of the books, the printing, the care of the editors, and the even the introductions were fascinating to me. And so I was always on looking for these books. And so I just want to thank you and the NESFA crew there for bringing this to us. This is an amazing way to preserve and to continue the legacy of these authors.
This is really a passion of ours. It's no one at NESFA is paid to do the work that we do. We do it because we love science fiction, and we want to share that love with other readers. Mostly what we really want is to have things that people can go to again and again and again and enjoy those classic stories and have a durable edition that you can go back to or leave to somebody else or give to somebody else as something that that they will enjoy and they will find their own passion. Maybe we'll see, but it's what we love to do.
And as much as I love collecting vintage books, and by the way, the cover here, Richard Powers, sort of brings me back.
Oh, I love Richard Powers.
Yeah, I was going to say that even as much as I love those vintage books, this is a lot easier to read. I am getting a little bit older here, and the beautiful pages and fonts and the care taken on it is way better than the newsprint, old newsprint, and very tiny font often in some of those books. So it's a great way of preserving it.
There are considerations. Look, the publishing industry has gone through a lot of changes, and our considerations are not those of a mass market publisher. Ours are with the reader. Our empathies are, our sympathies are with the author, but we are fans. first and foremost. So we're always thinking, if I'm a reader, what do I want to see, right? What do I want this book to be? There are economic considerations to, editing something and getting out all the typos. I'm sure you've read a lot of ebooks nowadays, and it's like, they could have fixed that. That's not the right word. It's like, it drives you crazy. And we have people who are really passionate about having having it properly edited, copy edited, so that you don't get jarred out of the experience of reading by some typo or some misspelling or some missing code, missing text. I've seen that in ebooks. It's like, where's the rest of this? Oh well.
That care is very much appreciated.
Absolutely. We are readers. We are readers, and we know what we want, and we know what we don't want, and we want that experience to be seamless. It should be the text that shines, and not the book or the anything else. We appreciate your kind words, but it's the authors. They're the real stars. They're the ones, the writers who wrote the text, who had the imagination, who put the words down, and we celebrate the writers. We're just happy that we can deliver that to people who will enjoy it, really.
And when you're approaching the estates of these writers, I'm sure now that you have a number of these books under your belt that they can see what you're doing. How's that gone in terms of writers that you decide that you would love to create a collection? Have the estates been cooperative, or is it a really difficult negotiation?
No, not at all. First of all, we don't care who prints the works, right? All we care about is that the works are available. So if Tor is going to reprint something, great, then we don't have to do it, right? So that's the goal. The goal is to get the works in print. So when you come from that standpoint and you go to an agent or an estate and say, look, we'd like to do this thing, for them it's found money. We're generally not exclusive. So if somebody else wants to come along and put one of these stories or two of these stories into an anthology somewhere, fine. If somebody reads that work and they discover they like Kornbluth or A.E. Van Vogt and come and buy our book, great. That's wonderful. Everybody wins. It's really a win-win scenario as far as I'm concerned. What generally happens is someone will come to us and say, this author's work is available, or have you thought about printing this, doing a collection of this guy or this person? And at that point, you need a honcho. We need someone who's going to kind of make that work. And that honcho then has to go out and get that stuff. And then there are a lot of people in the organization who will help. They'll help with layout. They'll help with getting material. They'll help with scanning if you need to do that. We've got a lot of people. We got tons of proofers. Okay. And as we've said earlier, people want it to be correct. It's not just good enough to present it. It has to be presented correctly. But without that honcho, there's no project.
That passionate advocate is really needed to get the project moving, is what I hear.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the sole key. That's the sole key. Everything else, we can make it happen. We can get the help. We can get the publishing. We can get the, to a certain extent, the funding. But you've got to be passionate about it. You've got to, be willing to go that extra mile and do your research, collect all the material, and really push it forward.
I have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
One is, where can fans of these authors here, where can they find NESFA books? Where can they find a list of books available?
Well, you could go to nesfa.org/press.
I'll
And
put that on
was
the screen too so that people see it.
great, great.
And I'll
And
put a link as well into the description for the video.
please do.
And so they can purchase it directly from there, correct?
Right. And, you know, most of our stuff is also available up on Amazon if you feel like, if you want to go that route.
Yeah.
Of course, I would prefer you purchase through us, but, you know, I get it. A lot of people use Amazon.
Now, you know, there's people from Britain and Canada, primarily in the United States, who watch this channel. I understand that basically you're serving just the continental United States at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can order from us to ship to both Canada, UK, and Australia. But bear in mind, shipping overseas is very expensive. So just bear, you know, but we will do the best we can. We're trying to hold the prices down. We just charge what we have to pay for shipping.
Yeah. And
it's
your print runs are of a smaller size. So to me, it makes real sense that you have the beauty and care you take in the quality of it. I think your price and your printing run, it makes sense completely what you're charging.
Yeah, well, we try to keep the prices down too. Again, the purpose is not to make money, but to get the books into people's hands, and we try to price accordingly.
Yeah,
but
and
obviously we don't want to lose money on it. But.
And to me, it's amazing where I find NESFA books, because I visited used bookstores in the United States and Canada, and every once in a while, there's one sticking out, and you have a great logo for your press. Yeah. And it really stands out on the shelf when I see it as well. So it's always fun. And I go, hey, there's another one. And that's where I've picked up most of mine.
Yeah. The NESFA shield was designed back in the 60s for the organization.
Yeah.
It made sense to use it as our imprint.
Yeah. I love it. It's beautiful. And I want to ask you about Boskone, because you have one coming up in February.
Yes, that's correct.
Give a promotion for that?
Of course.
Is in Boston?
As I mentioned earlier, one of the other things that we do at NESFA is we have an annual science fiction convention in the Boston area called Boskone. That's BOSKONE.org.
I'll put a link to that as well in the description.
And as you said, it's coming up in early mid-February. Our guests of honor this year are Jasper Ford. Teresa Mather is our artist guest. Kelly Armstrong is another of our special guests. We have Madison Matricula Roberts, our musical guest, and Heather Preston is our side speaker. It's just going to be a really cool thing. On Friday, we have a free Friday afternoon where you don't even have to buy a membership to attend from like 2 to 6 o'clock. You could just come, show up, and experience the convention for 4 hours, and without having to pay anything or register. You just come and attend for those few hours. The other thing is Cory Doctorow is going to be coming on Friday as well. And again, you don't have to register or anything. You can show up and attend he's going to talk about his new book, Picks and Shovels, I think it's called. And he's going to answer questions and stuff. And it's just going to be a great time. Please come.
And I'm guessing there'll be NESFA books available at the conference.
We will have a NESFA. There's a new NESFA book, Kelly Armstrong's Wolf's Peril. It will be on sale at a discount at the convention. And there will also be all the NESFA Press books are on sale at the dealer's room at Boskone. So you can go and buy as many as you want.
Awesome.
We'll print more.
Now, you know what? I think I've neglected to really ask you. You wear a lot of hats with NESFA, and I'm not sure that our viewers have understood all the things that you do for them. I got in contact with you just by the email sales@NESFA.
That's right.
And so you want to just let us know some of the hats that you've either worn or are wearing right now?
I've done, well, I mean, all of the people in NESFA, we kind of move around in our various responsibilities. You kind of shift to where your passion is. And I would say my major focus at the moment is the press. and I'm the business manager for the press. So that means I have to like process the Amazon orders and stuff like that. A lot of it is automated, but still it's work. But nobody's paid anything, so you kind of do what you have to do to make things work. I've been an editor, which I really enjoyed, but I'm not the only one who does editing. Dave Grubbs does a lot of the editing work, but we have a lot of editors who work on the NESFA Press books, and thank God there is, because there's no way I could do it all by myself. I've done a lot of other stuff. I've involved in the finance just to make sure that our funding is steady. But again, no one is paid anything. Everybody, it's all volunteer work. Every single person, from the president down to, just regular people who show up at the meetings. We're all just volunteers. We're here because we want the club to succeed, and we believe in what we do. We believe in promoting science fiction and fantasy, and getting it to people and making people realize it's not just something that you go to the movies to see. You can actually live science fiction. You can, it can be part of your life. And I wish I could be more specific than that, Richard, but I'll be honest. My focus right now is the press and making sure that, these books are still available. And if you want to go out and buy, The Best of James Schmitz or Silverlock by John Myers, that you could get a copy of that without having to pay somebody $800 or something on eBay. Well, I don't think that's a good. I don't think that's a good thing. I'm not a collector. If I have books because I want to reread them. I don't have books because they're in pristine condition. They're not in plastic wrap or anything like that. I think books are there to read, not to be idolized. Anyway.
You mentioned James H. Smith. That was your first NESFA choice, I believe.
That's correct.
And a couple of my friends and viewers, we really enjoy his series with Tulsi Amberton and others. And so it was great to see that is included. His short stories are included in one of your books too, as a collection.
Isn't he charming? He's just
fun. Like The Witches of Karis, I think it was.
Yeah, Witches of Karis. Oh my God.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. I actually talked with the editor of that book about whether we wanted to have an essential James Schmitz, but he was like, "Yeah, not a good idea."
Well, thank you very much, Tim, for joining me and letting us know all about NESFA. I've learned a lot today, and I once again just want to say, as a fan, my appreciation. I just want to pass my appreciation on to you for the work that your group has done. So all the best to you. I hope you have a great convention, and perhaps we can talk again in the future.
Please do. There's a lot of discussion we could have about small presses and what people can do to support small presses and the challenges of small presses. We're in a great position because we're a nonprofit to be able to continue doing the work that we do. And I really appreciate you giving us a venue to talk about NESFA Press. We love what we do. If I can express the passion in my voice about what we do, there's a lot more people in our group who feel exactly the same way, and if not more. But you're talking to me, so here it is. Anyway, thank you so much.
Until next time, keep supporting those small presses and keep reading.